You know, I am an adjunct professor of music at Berklee College of Music and at State University in New York. I go up to 3 different state universities in New York, and I teach, you know, so it's kind of like being a visiting professor. And, you know, it's just from doing session stuff and then some playing, and I do live gigs around here too, and, you know, you know, I've just tried to have my hand a little bit in everything. One of the amazing things that happened was they have these things called the NAMM show, and Andrew knows about it. It's basically where all the music instrument manufacturers come together, California once a year, and in Nashville, you know, and they're showing their new stuff. It could be Mapex and, you know, different companies, and I would go to those shows, and I'd sit down and kind of start playing. I got to meet all these people. Through making contacts, you know, eventually, over time, led to endorsement with Zildjian and Yamaha drums and another company named D-Drum. And what happened with D-Drum was, now you see the D-Drums they have there, but they started out making electric drums, and they make a thing called the Nordly drum. And D-Drum had me doing these clinics, like going around, and I'd show up, and a lot of times it'd be with other famous drummers. So I got to know these guys, and I was touring around, and literally started touring around the country and the world, you know, doing these drum clinics with them. And these other drummers started asking me about the D-Drum setup. So D-Drum then kind of put me head of artist relations. I had never even asked for it. They just said, man, you know all these drummers, so we want to do artist relations for us, you know, and that way it's kind of like a soft sell. And I was, you know, I started working with them. And then famous drummers, Kenny Aronoff, Dave Weckl, Nico McBrain with Iron Maiden, Tommy Lee, who's playing here tonight. All these guys, they'd see me play at these shows, or I got to know them. And then next thing I know, I'd be on a plane flying out to their house and going to their personal studios and designing setups with them for D-Drum, you know, and getting to know them. And I never asked for that. I never looked for it. I never even had it on my path of my career. But it's something I got paid to do, to go hang out with these guys and stay at their house sometimes for a week and develop a drum set with taking samples and sounds and just, you know, you never know. Again, you never know where these relationships will take you. But a lot of that stuff, you know, stuff that even started out in a store just like this, the place Long Island Drum Center. I can say that meeting the reps that sold Zildjian cymbals and stuff like that when I was a teenager, it was the same guys as I got older, and I always stay in touch with them. And you know, I've been endorsing them for 25 years now, you know, and I've stayed with the same company. And it took me, that endorsement took me to a lot of other places. But you know, if you think outside the box and think of different places you can go, you know, producing music, you know, there's no end, you know, but there's plenty of ways that outside of just playing. And I'm not discouraging anyone from doing it. I say I always do that, but like my father taught me, this is a business. Okay, never forget. It's an art form, but it is a business. And if you keep yourself reminded of that, you know, and keep yourself open-minded, and don't burn down bridges with people, you know, you can make a really good living doing this, okay? And even if it's not, even if it's a mediocre living, to wake up every day and play drums or play guitar or play keyboard and do it for a living and pay all your bills and get married and have a family and do whatever else in your life, it's a really good feeling when you think of what else could be. Because I saw a lot of people drop out along the way that could have done this. They just gave up. So. Anyway.
Dave, I got a question.
Yeah.
You're speaking a lot about the importance of networking within the musician community. Can you give some finer points about how to go about approaching someone so you don't automatically be that gushing fan and turn them off?
That's a great question. And I do want to open this up right now. You know, part of what I did, the best way for me to describe this is what I did. And that was a lot of that stuff, like I said, like two of my big mentors, Jim Chapin and Dave Weckl. One was, whenever they'd have these clinics and stuff like this, you know, I'd always look for clinics where they'd have these different things at any store. And I'd meet drummers, because drummers would always have this like hang afterwards. You know, I'd find out, it wasn't just the guy, I wasn't necessarily going up there to get somebody's autograph and go, I got all your records, I got all this, you know. It was, I found out that there was always a hang afterwards. They were always going to go out to dinner or do something like that, or go out to lunch, and I'd find out, you know, I'd get hanging out, and I'd go out, you know, and then it was trying to become more of a peer, you know. Same thing, it wasn't about going to shows, you know, big shows, big concerts, like you know, Motley Crue playing tonight. It's not about going down there and, you know, trying to hit up somebody for a backstage pass. But, you know, when guys were in town, a lot of times, after a show, and I'm not going to say Motley Crue's going to, there are certain bands that after shows will go out to a club and play and sit in and jam. And one of the coolest things that I had in New York City, I was doing a jam, it was this, at the China Club, it was called the Pro Jam. And it was every Wednesday night. And it was one of my other teachers, Scott Joe Franco, did it. And when he couldn't do it, he'd have me do it. And then it became my gig. It was like an every Wednesday night gig. And whoever was in town, people found out about it. And they'd come out, you know, I mean, we'd have Bon Jovi, John Bon Jovi, coming and sitting in. And then I talked to them. And then the next week it could be, you know, Janet Jackson, or I mean, it was just all across the board, these different people coming in and hanging out. But a lot of times when people come in town, you know, if they're staying overnight, they're not just holding up in their hotel, they're going out and checking out music, and that was part of that being on the scene, get to know people, you know, get into, you know, be wherever they're gonna be hanging out at clinics. But it wasn't about me trying to come across, if I had music, I could give them, I always gave them back then, it could be cassettes or something like that, or if it's a CD or something, you know. There are many ways to reach out to people, but I always wanted to do it that, you know, I respected them as a player, and I'm an up-and-coming musician, and I'd always ask a question to them, which most people would tune in, and I found people really want to help out. I'd say, well, I'm a musician, I'm trying to make, you know, any good advice for me. And you know what I found out, just by humbling myself and asking that question, a lot of people would spend time with me. You know, I'd be like, who'd you study with? You know, just learn to ask questions, you know, and not just sit there and be like, yeah, dude, man, that record you guys, that track, man, whatever, you know, and just worship them, which I could do. I'd always be thankful to them, but at the same time, I didn't want to, I was trying to become more of a peer and more of a student and see whatever advice they could give, you know, and just stay in touch, you know. When a lot of these people would be like, they'd come through town, I never expected anything from anyone. If somebody came through town, I knew they'd always come back. And it was the next time, so maybe a third, fourth time, or I'd go to one of these NAMM shows out in California when I was young, and I'd see somebody out there just once a year. And after the third or fourth time, all of a sudden they see you, and it's like, hey, Dave, and they give you a hug. And now it's just like, okay, you're becoming one of the guys, you know, you're getting to know the people that come in these stores that work for these different companies and stuff like that, you know. You find out from Andrew and Melissa who the rep is, and you just introduce and you say, I use some of your stuff. It's not looking for anything, hey, man, I'm looking for an endorsement. The first question you don't want to be is, what do I need to get an endorsement? Who in your company do I send an endorsement to? You get to know these sales reps, and over time, you know, just tell them what you're doing. Hey, man, you're going to be in town? My band's playing Thursday night. You guys going to be in? Why don't you come down? Oh, you play guitar too? Why don't you sit in? You know, you want to sit, you know, and whatever it was just getting on a level with them and starting to communicate. And I learned not to ask anything of anyone at the beginning. I was never one to be like, well, who do I need to talk to at your company to get an endorsement? You know, or who's the manager of your band? My band's looking for a record deal. You know, it was just always me communicating with one other musician, you know, as another musician, and maybe, you know, someone looking for their advice.
So more about hanging out than selling yourself.
Yeah, it's not about selling. It's becoming you know what? It's about building a relationship with them, getting to know them over time. Get to the point where you can send them an email and they'll write you back. You know, just ask them the question, not asking them more about, hey man, this is what my band's doing now, or this is what, check this thing out, man, I just posted a video on YouTube, check this out, you know, and just send them a link. And if you don't hear back, that's cool. There are people I would do that to every now and then, and the third thing I'd send out, they'd be like, whoa, man, that sounds amazing, Dave, you know, and just be like, you know, I just kept at it. But always, I never asked for anything, you know, I just always did it in a way where I built friendship with them over time, you know. I didn't look for home runs. You know, to me, each little base hit, you know, if it was just butting the ball and making contact, you know, so the next time I see them, and I come into a room like this, and I recognize me, hey man, it could be a year later, how are you doing? What are you going to do in this past year? You know, playing with band, you playing out, you guys playing this week, I'm in town, I'd love to come out and hear you, you know, just, you know, it's relationship building, you know, is what it comes down to. Who else might have any questions about anything? Drumming, something I was doing, careers, anything?
What are some of the clients you've worked in, like, studio sections and stuff?
What have I?
Like, clients you've worked for in the studio.
Oh, different people I played with in the
Yes.
studio? Sheryl Crow, Bonnie Raitt, band called the Spin Doctors. Let me see, you know, there was, well, if you ever hear of, she's older, but Taylor Dane. A lot of my early studio session, I'll just lead into this, besides people I played with. The guy Joe Franco was a mentor of mine. If anybody ever hear the band Twisted Sister? Okay, well, Joe played with Twisted. He wasn't the original drummer, Twisted Sister. When they fired the drummer, A.J. Perro, he got the gig. But Joe was doing a lot of programming in New York. And anyone know who Mariah Carey is? Okay, well, he played he did all the drum programming, all the first records. And he got in with these group of guys, and that led to Taylor Dane, this other, big star back then. And Joe was getting a lot of money going on the road. But a lot of people he was doing these other sessions for, either playing or doing whatever, they would ask him to do it, and he couldn't do it. So he started offering it to me, And then when he'd be busy, so I got to go on some of my first touring stuff was with this girl, Taylor Dane. And then it came to get, into the studio. Well, Joe was too busy doing all these million things he was doing. And, you go over to his apartment in New York City, and there's nothing but gold records going down the wall and platinum records, and he's busy. But he would give out that stuff to me, And, from meeting different producers, there was a guy, Rick Wake, that produced all that stuff. And Rick Wake, he produced Mariah Carey stuff and the Taylor Dane stuff, and this girl, Patti Smythe, and just a lot of female artists at the time. So I got to actually play on a lot of that stuff at the time. There's a bunch of different, a lot of what I do, a lot of studio stuff that I've done. I've got a good friend called Glenn Sherman, and this is about contact building too. He and I, about 20 years ago, played with a guy, Jacob Dylan. He's in the Wallflowers. It's Bob Dylan's son. And we had been in this band, and we did the record, and then a whole bunch of different stuff happened, and we did Jacob's first solo record, and then he started Wallflowers. But I met some really good musicians on that, and it's about exactly 20 years ago. And one of the guitarists, this guy Glenn Sherman, he and I, we had known about each other, but we'd never played together. It was one of those things where we always knew about each other in New York, but never kind of played. And Glenn does a lot of TV show stuff, from Entertainment Tonight, the Maury Povich show, and just all this different stuff. So I constantly work for him doing drum loops, which I could do usually right from my studio. So there's a lot of TV stuff that I do. Well, I don't even have to go to New York to do it. I just create drum loops and record some loops. I send them to him. And his job every day is to make $250,000 a year, to open up the door to his basement, go downstairs in his studio, and then just look at some clips for Entertainment Tonight, and then just kind of take some of the loops, he's like copy and paste some stuff I sent them, or if he needs some more stuff, and then kind of write some guitar chords and keyboard and sound effects, and that's it. So most of what I do right now, studio stuff, is really like that geared towards radio, TV, and like movie soundtrack stuff. But a lot of it's done right on Pro Tools, right from my own little studio. Just set via a file, Dropbox, right over the handle. But there's like I said, that just goes again. It's another one of those things where I built a relationship, which could have been just one gig. Hey man, that was a fun record. Nice to see you. Hopefully we get to work again. It's just something where we just stayed in touch. And I hadn't heard from him in years. Then we ran into each other again, and then from him doing that, he said, "Hey man, can you do drum loops?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do drum loops," and led into a lot of work. So a lot of little jingles and stuff that you might hear, like car ads and stuff. It's not necessarily me even playing. I just create a 4-bar drum loop and I just ship it off. Fun stuff. Anyone else have any questions? Yes.
My question is going to be all over the place.
Okay.
You probably addressed it. So you started talking about how you decided you wanted to be a session musician, and you come in and you've worked with these people and you've done all these different aspects of your career drumming. So it's very different from when I hear like my son will say, "Gee, I'd like to create a band." Right? So then you've got like 5 kids or 5 musicians who are now working together, always working together. So in the industry, I don't really understand the industry. I guess there are bands that always work together as a unit. You think of some of Aerosmith, that kind of stuff.
Right.
I guess. But then the industry is really made up of all these session musicians. So you have like a main vocalist or something.
Right.
And then the band is just whoever's available is essentially what you're saying.
Well, yes. And the question was,
The question was all over the place.
No, not really. Not really. It's number one, playing in a band right now and doing what you're doing. That's great. That's part of you going up and having that. And you definitely want to play in that, because it's not like you necessarily have the opportunity to be out in the club scene at your age, playing with like 15 different bands or getting right into. But Yeah, being a session player, there's a guy, Kenny Aronoff, that I'm friends with, who I've done stuff for D-Drum with, and he's one of those guys, he started, his big break, he started playing with John Mellencamp. And in doing that, people really liked his solid play. So when he'd be off the road, you know, people would start calling him, John Fogarty might call, like he plays with. So that guy, it could be some of the other players he played with, but eventually he'd play and do a record or tour with John Fogarty. And then he'd meet some other people when he was doing that gig or that record, or that producer. And see, yeah, being the session player is really, it's supporting, sometimes in a whole band, sometimes it's just working for one artist, sometimes it might be coming in there bands like Steely Dan, where like they're different session players, they bring it in and out, but, you know, it's, you know, a lot of it ends up being whoever that music director is. Like I say, that those artists usually have one person that they work with and saying, this is what I need for this tour, you know, and it's those music directors. Sometimes it is the artist is their own music director, but if it was like a John Mellencamp type of person, you know, they're going to pick out whoever they need to do their tours and, you know, and records. And that might not be the same thing for the next record. It could be a totally, sometimes they just want someone totally, like, there's a band, Sugarland, here from, you know, and I know the different people I play with them, and I do some sessions and stuff with, there's a girl, Annie Clements, she plays bass, she lives up in Nashville, and her husband, and they have their own production team. And she is constantly on the road, like when Sugarland hasn't been doing anything, and she's on the road with a guy, Amos Lee, right now. She's been out on the road with Holly Williams, which is Hank Williams Jr.'s daughter. And then she's constantly on the road with somebody, you know, because she's networked herself. She went to Berkeley and then left and moved to Nashville. And after getting that gig, it's like, well, Sugarland's not doing anything. That doesn't mean I have to. So she's in a band, but she's constantly working and constantly on the road. So, because she's learned to network and usually hired out by these other music directors, whoever it is for that artist, to constantly jump from one. She'll finish up a tour, like she's never home. She's just got bags packed. She's just like finishes, goes to rehearsal for the next tour, and just on the next tour, whoever it is, you know. And it keeps you playing. You still get to play in big places or small places, whatever it is. But you know, you're constantly working. You don't have to just say, well, it's my band. I remember every time, you know, I could talk about Nico McBrain from Iron Maiden, and I worked with him with this company, D-Drum. He was living in Boca Raton, and I went to his house, and he was in a period of his life where Iron Maiden hadn't done anything. And he was on the phone with his ex-wife. He was married to a former Miss Florida, you know, and probably his third or fourth wife or something like that. And I stayed over at his place, and one of his ex-wives called because he hadn't sent alimony, and he was just like, honey, well, we're not doing anything, and I don't know when we're going on tour, and he was just waiting. You know, and if it was going to be 2 more years before we went on the road, whatever money he used up, if it wasn't record sales because he didn't like the songs, well, he was just waiting, you know. And my whole thing is I started looking at, yeah, it's great to play with one band and be like my friend Annie is that I said, she's the bass player in Sugarland, but she's not waiting for them to do another tour. She's out working with other people. She's not waiting. Sugarland doesn't do another record or tour for 2 more years. She's just not going, I hope they do something this year because I've got just enough to pay my mortgage for another year. You know, she's constantly working, and that's what I decided kind of early on that I wanted to be able to try and do. It's just be able. But there's nothing wrong with playing. What you're doing now is the right thing to do. But keep your mind open, and anybody else that eventually ever calls you to do anything, it doesn't mean you're snubbing the guys that you're playing with. If you ever go out to do it, it doesn't be like, well, I'm going to choose these guys over. It's not about that. It's just like telling the guys, hey, you know, this might even be better for us. You never know who are going to meet through them. You know, it's about, again, not competition. It's about trying to play with as many musicians as possible. The more musicians you play with, the better player you'll be. That's a fact. You know?
I'm just curious what brought you to Georgia?
Music. No, but I've been here 14 years now. Better part of 14 years. I left to go play with. I got here in 2000, and I actually had been living. I was doing all this stuff for D-Drum, like I said, and doing sessions. They were down in Florida. I moved down to Florida, and I wasn't really playing with anybody. So I found some band in Miami and I started playing around, and that's when like Miami Sound Machine was doing stuff with Gloria Estefan, and we went on tour, and we were opening out actually for Gloria Estefan. And we got to Atlanta, and we were off for a day, and I was just like, I kind of like this area, and want to check out the music scene. And I talked to some people, and then we had to come back, like, probably about 6 months later to Atlanta. So I figured that on my day off I'd go check it out, and I did that. But it's funny, my story in Atlanta is I